going to just double mic this? Is that what you're thinking?
No, I'll take it.
All right. You rolling yet? Okay. Well, Shaun, many congratulations. What a performance, particularly at the end, the way you wrapped that up in style.
Yeah, I guess it's the old thing, isn't it? It's not how you start. It is how you finish. And 6-2 down after the first session, I went to bed that night a little bit miserable, but with the sort of added bonus of having been there before. I think I lost the first session of my first World semi-final 6-2, and it's not first to 6. And at 10-4 behind, I reminded myself it's not first to 10 either. And I managed to dig myself out of a hole and win the last 2 of the first half of the match, and that really did seem to swing things, and came out today, all guns blazing, and it seems to have worked.
We saw the emotion. It just shows you how much it still means after all these years, even when you've been there and done it.
Yeah, absolutely. That emotion's always in there. I usually do a much better job of keeping it in. Shaun Murphy, the showman, is normally kept in check. But, I allowed him out today and over the last couple of days, and he liked it.
Is that what you're going to have to sort of channel as well in the final?
I'm not sure. I mean, as I say, it's not a staged process. It's all based on raw emotion and how you're feeling at the time. So if I get the urge, I'll let him go. But as I say, it's all just on the spur of the moment, and trying to retain some dignity.
What does it mean to you to get to the final again? I mean, obviously you've talked about difficult times over recent years. Were there times when you thought I would never get back to this stage?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's completely out of the blue for me, and it'll be out of the blue for the lads that I've been practicing with in recent weeks and months. They've been looking at me going, maybe you should think about doing something. The practice hasn't been great, but I've been trying a lot of things out. I've been experimenting with my game, trying different shots, different ways of looking at shots, and obviously in practice it hasn't worked, but something's worked. And I think maybe practicing with a much better, higher calibre of opponent more often has really paid dividends.
What would it mean to you to win a second title? Because I think you said to me once before, there's that group of players that have won it once, but then you get into that sort of special group of people who've won it 2 or more times. So would it be extra special just to get it again and just to prove it again? Yeah,
I think so. I think, didn't really take part in the 2009 final. Didn't really, and then got to within 3 frames in 2015. So, I've come close to getting into that, quite small club. There aren't many players who've won it more than once. And I do think there is a special little, it's like having your own private parking space somewhere at the Crucible or something, It's amongst the players, it's quite special if you've won here more than once. So it would mean everything to get into that club.
And extra special as well with the family around now?
Well, unfortunately, the family are stuck in Dublin and won't be able to come. Due to travel restrictions, coming here and then going home, so that's going to be sad. Another episode of what life's like not to live on this island. So I'm disappointed about that. Everyone else, it feels as much. Pretty much everyone else in this tournament has had friends and family here. I've obviously not had, and that aspect of it's been quite challenging.
I meant really in terms of obviously children, at least the older one being of an age where they can actually see you on the telly and actually maybe understand what you hopefully are going to achieve.
Well, no, I can assure you that Molly's just happy to see Daddy very briefly, and Harry gives the TV a nod, but they both very quickly want to put Paw Patrol back on, or Ben and Holly. So and that's exactly how it should be.
We wish you all the best.
Thank you.
I'll show a very quick one for TalkSport.
Get out your way, Hector. So I've got a fire.
Well, with Shaun Murphy into the final of the Betfred World Championship. Shaun, on the match itself, I think you won 13 of the last 15 frames from 10-4 down. That's a hell of a streak. I recall the match against Matthew Stevens a good few years ago, but how was that match for you in terms of how you addressed it from that deficit?
Yeah, it definitely was a tale of 2 halves. I mean, it's 10-4. I was by far the weaker player out there. It took me a long time to adapt to playing conditions. A lot was made of that when the first session of the other semi-final took place, that the table was borderline unplayable. And it cost me a couple of good shots there in the first session of the semi, and I lost that session 6-2. But I just kept telling myself that, it wasn't first to 6, it wasn't first to 10, and to keep pushing, and eventually things might turn.
You were lost in the final 2015, so it's obviously 6 years ago. It must be great to be back in the showpiece.
Yeah, this is what we dream of. It's nights like tonight and the anticipation of days like tomorrow and Monday that keep you getting in the club and practicing for 6, 7, 8 hours a day, driving to other pros, travelling to other pros to spar and practice and learn. It's days like today that keep you FaceTiming your coach in lockdown and keep you driving forward, trying to watch your old matches back, learn from your mistakes, take it on the chin and not give up. And I'm over the moon.
even before Kyren, he did actually mention it in his post-match thing, you could see during the last couple of days how fired up you were, and there were big frames, weren't there, big ends of sessions, and you were letting it rip a bit. Was that just natural emotion coming out?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I wouldn't normally be like that, but I usually feel like that inside. I just very rarely let it go. I normally keep it inside, but I think I had to let it go, and I ideally hope that I've not offended Kyren in any way. It certainly wasn't directed at him. They were on my shots, celebrating my good moments. So I think that's allowed.
And it's been a tough year, I think, for everyone, but more travel for you, obviously not being able to get back to Ireland all the time. Does this make up for some of those sort of lonely hotel evenings in Milton Keynes that a lot of you have spent this year?
Yeah, it certainly makes a few of those rough nights in Milton Keynes, watching the sheeting rain coming down outside. It certainly makes a few of those nights worthwhile. But no, it's an absolute thrill to be into another final, and I can't wait.
Well, congratulations, Shaun. Good luck.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.
Shaun, just on the fist pumping and how fired up you were, and the crowd seemed to love it. And we've noticed recently just little things that you've been doing as you've been coming out, little bows to them and little waves and that kind of thing. You talk about this sort of inner showman that you have. This is the perfect stage to kind of let that out, isn't it?
Well, in this very venue 2 years ago, having lost, I can't remember who I lost to, but I said to Chris Henry that I decided I was going to really let that person out to play now. I was going to try and enjoy what is probably the last third of my career as a professional player. I'm still dangerous. And I was going to try and enjoy it a bit more out there and interact with the crowd and try and put on a show. And of course, then lockdown struck and we haven't seen an audience member for 12 months. So he's, that sort of showman element and that sort of guy interacting with the crowd, and he's been waiting to come out to play. And I let him out yesterday, and he quite enjoyed it.
We spoke to Kyren very briefly as he came out. He said that he maybe found it a little off-putting initially, maybe a touch disrespectful. But to be clear, you weren't trying to be that. It was just a case of responding to what the crowd were giving you.
Did he use the word disrespectful?
Rob, correct me if I'm wrong. What did he say?
No, he didn't.
Okay, but he brought it up in the interview just as were you using it as a tactic or against Kyren, or was it again you were just responding to the crowd and what they were giving you?
Yeah, listen, we're in a theatre and it's a show, and we are an entertainment industry, and we are probably the only sport that don't do that. Tennis players are doing it after every point. Footballers do it after every goal. Golfers do it when they make a birdie, an eagle, or hit a good shot. I've give it the fist after potting a great black, winning a frame I shouldn't, and at the end of a session. It's not, it's not a massive deal. I suppose, for Kyren or for anyone else, there's a lot more in winning matches in that room than just putting balls in pockets. There's a bit more to it. It is a theatre, and that element of it, I think, is something that the past champions and past great players, they probably understand better than the rest.
You've been very open and honest about how life has been for you and for people in general, on and off the table during this kind of COVID period. Whatever happens now in the final, will this allow you now to, I guess, close out that kind of chapter and look ahead to brighter things to come?
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I mean, just with the return of the fans, and let's hope that the data collected by the DCMS and all those involved, for people who've been here and attended, let's hope that data is positive, and let's hope that this event does what it was said to do on the tin, which is lead to the reopening of events, public events, indoor events, nightclubs, wine bars, cafes, the lot. Let's hope that this does exactly what it was supposed to do, and we can look back at this as a great forebearer event, and that we led the charge.
Shaun, how important has Chris Henry been to your career in the last year or so?
Well, Chris Henry we started working together in 2013, and he's been an integral member of my team ever since. We've had time where we've worked a little bit more heavier with each other than not, and he's been a solid member of my team for 8 years, and he's an essential cog in the operation. He's the most gifted coach I know. He's able to work out exactly what's going on with the cue ball and why it's not going in the right direction in very little time. And obviously, as a fully paid up member of the site club, he's able to get in and work his magic on how you're thinking, and of course that leads to better performance.
Snooker's a mental game. Was that lacking from your game, just getting someone to get inside the grey matter?
No, actually, what struck me in the last couple of seasons has been technique. You know, there've been gaping holes in my technique, bit of shot selection here or there, but actual flaws in my technique mechanics, which I've spent many a boring hour fixing. And Chris and I have been saying, as we've travelled the country, and I've FaceTimed him and Zoomed him from isolation rooms in hotels, that eventually it would click, and it's clicked this week.
It could be the Chris Henry derby, of course. So how's he going to do it? I mean, you obviously have to talk to him. How will that work? Are you happy with it? He has another player and you're playing the same final. Will you both be happy if it is Selby?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's something that when Chris and I started working together in 2013, it was more on an exclusive basis. He was working specifically with me, but obviously he became very popular, and it's not for me to tell him that he can only work with me. That's not how it works. And when he came to me and asked me, was it okay if he worked with Mark Selby? Of course, I said, yeah. Mark and I go way back. We've known each other since we were children, so I would never say no. This is a potential scenario that, of course, you envisage, and isn't it a nice problem to have?
Shaun, particularly sort of developing the Shaun the showman and entertainment. When you look at the world final, obviously for you personally, it's a chance to win 500 grand, a world title, and play in a world final. It's brilliant for you. But it's also the showpiece, isn't it? It's what everybody all around the world is watching. Is there quite a almost responsibility to make it a real show, as the words you were talking about tonight, that particular match?
I think so. It's a responsibility, I feel, as a sports person. I think it's something that other sports people seem to do. They marry that balance between performance and entertainment. I think it's something we lack in snooker, I have to be honest. I'm not going to name any names and call anyone out, but I don't think enough of the players do enough to entertain. It's not all about what happens on the table. And I think maybe my antics over the last couple of days, whilst they've been completely spur of the moment things, it's not something I've done by design. I'm getting the sense it might have ruffled a few feathers. But my social timelines, my Twitter timeline, my Instagram feed, all the others are full of people who loved it. They love it. They're sick of seeing snooker players walk around, they're looking at the floor, not interacting with people who've paid money to come and see them play. Can you imagine a darts player making a 9-darter and not looking at the crowd?
No.
Snooker players, they finish their match, they shake hands, and they leave the arena within 3 seconds. If I was a paying customer, I'd be disappointed most of the time.
And I know you don't want to name names, but I mean, we have watched the other semi-final without naming names, but we all know there have been players warned for slow play. They've been hauled off this afternoon. It has been pretty slow stuff. I mean, I don't think that's a secret to say that. The stats bear that out. When it comes to the final, is it almost incumbent on both players to try and not let it get to that?
I think there is a responsibility on the players, but ultimately, the responsibility for getting on with it, if we're talking specifically about that, lies with the governing body.
Referees as well.
I think I personally don't like referees stepping in and telling players to get on with it, because most of the referees haven't played snooker to a high enough level to know the difference between a hard shot and an easy shot. I think those rules should be taken away from referees and made very clear by the governing body. I've always said there should be a shot clock. I've been saying that for 10 years.
Even at the Crucible?
Even at the Crucible. And I'm not saying, I don't think it shouldn't be 20 seconds.
Yeah.
But, unfortunately, we live in a world where, people just turn off. They just put Netflix on. And that's the world we've now got to compete in. We're not competing against 2 other channels like we did in the 80s. We don't have our regular spot on grandstand that the whole nation tunes in to tune in on like they did when I was a kid watching sport. It's not the world we live in. And we have to compete and we have to change.
Thank you.
Shaun, there's an argument, isn't it, that there aren't any characters in snooker anymore from what we saw back in the day, but that's the onus on the players, isn't it, to sort of widen the appeal of the sport in that sense?
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword in as much as that responsibility does lie with the player, but just losing my, I find it very hard to concentrate with all that noise.
Should we go watch the end of it?
Yeah, no. I just think the responsibility lies both with the players and with the governing body. You must remember that back in the 70s and 80s, when those characters were developed, the professional tournaments were few and far between, and they made their money doing exhibitions, and so they became crowd entertainers. They became good at that. Now the balance has gone the other way, and you just see people are just in there. You know, most of the crew coming on, the rookies who get on tour, the young players, you know, all the academy goers, the sort of new generation. They're not bothered about entertaining. They just want the check at the end of the week, and it's that the balance has switched.
Are you and Stuart okay? After that final that you had a bad back, I think, didn't you? And obviously Stuart wasn't very particularly happy about those comments. I think he tweeted something about World Snooker. I've got the tweet here, actually.
What did he say?
He said, I think it was in relation to World Snooker, but a tweet, and he said everyone was right. I was lucky to win the Worlds in 2015. What a load of crap. Was his response to that? Were you aware
Response
of that?
to what?
Basically, you having a back problem, saying that you were injured, you didn't feel so good physically in that 2015 final.
Well, when did I say that?
In a World Snooker interview, they ran a couple of years later. I suppose my point is, are we reading too much into this? Do you have a good relationship with Stuart? Do you get on as such, or is that water under the bridge?
Yeah, no. Listen, you know, we're very different people, and you know, we've moved on, and our lives have gone in different directions. I do remember now you're saying that. I remember giving that interview and talking about. I mean, bring Chris Henry and he'll vouch for me. He when I was going out to play in that match, I was lay on the floor of the practice room and he was standing on my back. I couldn't bend over. So, you know, I've never said in my life that Stuart Bingham was lucky to win the final, and I've never said that my sore neck and back problems that during that whole week played any part in my defeat. I've never said that in my life. Stuart Bingham was a worthy world champion, and he was the much better player over the 2 days.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Betfred, proud sponsor of the World Snooker Championship.